Hello there. As Minnie Pearl would say, but in a far higher register, howdy. I'm Robert McKay. I am rebuilding my Whiskey Basics playlist. You saw the name of the channel, and the whole reason for the channel is Whiskey Basics. But I accidentally deleted it. Don't ask me how. I have no clue how I managed to do that. I swear that I did not click the delete button, but it's gone. So I'm rebuilding it. And the idea of the channel, and particularly of this Whiskey Basics playlist, is to take information that I wanted to learn when I was new to whiskey and put it in one place because I couldn't find it in one place back then in 2021. Now, tonight I say, it's 11:26 here as I'm recording at night, 23:26 in military time, which is what I think in. I hope I'm a little more humble now than I was yesterday and the day before and 10 years ago and on and on. When I originally recorded this video the first time around, and I don't remember just when I started the channel, and I've not tried to see if I can find out from YouTube. When I first started it, I had only been drinking whiskey a year or two maybe. Now it's 4 and beyond. And I had to be humble back then because I was still learning. I'm still learning now. Probably everybody who drinks whiskey and savors it, as opposed to just boom, boom, boom. You know, anybody can throw back shots on it, just buy Everclear and be done with it. But I think all of us who savor whiskey, who enjoy whiskey, are always learning. If not new techniques, new information, then new bottles, new whiskeys. So I was humble then. I hope I'm still humble now. In fact, I have gained a little bit of humbleness because the way I originally phrased this is, how do you taste whiskey? And these Whiskey Basics videos are question and answer. I ask a question, I answer it. Well, I've come to realize that there are some general principles, but we're all, just as all our palates are different, so our methods and our ways of doing things can differ. The first thing I would say is the glass. First thing I would talk about. This is a Glencairn glass. It is not, repeat, not. Again, I say not a Glencairn. It is a Glencairn. 2 syllables, not 3. 2 syllables. Glencairn. And in Scotland, it would probably be something faintly resembling Glencairn. But I don't speak Scots, and certainly I don't speak Gaelic. They call it Gaelic over there, and it's a minority language in Scotland. For that matter, so is Scots, although their English has a fair amount of Scots and Gaelic influence. Now, there are various glasses designed for drinking whiskey. This is the only one, well, I've tried 2. And of the 2, this one by far works the best for me. Others will work best for other people because we're all different. But they designed this in Scotland specifically for drinking whiskey. There were champagne flutes, there were brandy snifters, there were wine glasses. There was not a specific whiskey tasting glass. This is the first. And for me, I have seen, well, I tried, as I say, the other one for reasons that at the time seemed to me good and sufficient. This is the one that works the best. But whatever you do, get a glass designed for evaluating whiskey. A rocks glass is better than nothing, but it's not designed for this purpose. So having talked about the glass, we get down to the actual tasting. And before you can taste whiskey, you have to pour it. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Yeah, that is an obvious statement. What I'm making this video with is Clyde May's, let me look at it, straight bourbon whiskey. It doesn't say Alabama straight bourbon whiskey because it's not made in Alabama. Now, in January of 2025, this year, they started construction. I believe it was started construction. I don't think they actually opened it. But anyway, they're working on their own distillery. They'll be distilling their own whiskey in Alabama. And once that gets into the bottles, then they can call it under the law Alabama straight bourbon whiskey. But this juice is distilled in Indiana. It's bottled by, and I'm not sure how they pronounce this, Conica Brands, Maddox, Kentucky. Or is that Matalock? It's small print. But the Conica, or Conica, or however you say it, there's Conica Ridge in Alabama, and that was Clyde May's country. He was a legitimate moonshiner and bootlegger who did time in prison for making liquor without federal permission, and for that matter, without state permission. And his deal, now, moonshine comes off the still, goes into the barrel, the bucket, the jar, whatever, and goes straight to the seller, the bootlegger, who distributes it to various other people and eventually the drinker. They don't age it. But Clyde May's was making enough. And he started right after World War II. He'd done his time in the service, come back, needed money for his family, which is how in the old days, and even today I suppose, a lot of moonshiners get into it. They need money to feed the family. But he was making enough liquor that he could put some of it in barrels and age it. And he would bake apples and cut them up and put pieces of apple in the barrel. And the first time I ever opened any of Clyde May's bourbon, this is my second bottle. The first one was a small bottle, then I got the fifth. First time I opened it, it was like my mama's baked apples. Well, that's the whiskey, the way we go at it. And you'll notice, by the way, how I hold the glass. A lot of people, and I used to do this, hold it by the base. To me, that's awkward. It is easier for me to hold it here. The weight then is at the hand instead of above the hand. And you're not really getting a lot of heat transfer, especially if you're setting it down periodically and picking it up to sip. And the reason you don't want heat transfer is it affects the flavor of the whiskey. Sorry about that. Had an itch. And as a general rule, the flavor of whiskey is best at room temperature. Now, if you like it on ice, that's fine. I don't like cool whiskey. Equally, I don't want warm whiskey. I want room temperature. And so you don't want a lot of heat transfer from your hand. But now, I'm not telling you everything I do. Some of this stuff I don't often do. But these are things that I either do or have done at some point. There's the color. And if you're on MeWe, you can look me up in the, especially the Bourbon Aficionados group. And I post pictures in various contexts of bottles I bought. I stick them on the top of my car and I take pictures. And when the sun shines through a bottle at just the right angle, it is beautiful. Here you're not going to see the color in quite that way, but you can see it's a nice dark copper color. I hold it up this way to the light, and I've seen darker, but this is a nice dark copper color. And that usually reflects age. I'm looking for an age statement here. I do not see one. But because it is straight whiskey without an age statement, we know that it is at least 4 years old. I've done a video already, uploaded it already, on what straight whiskey is. Generally, color reflects age and or proof. I just like to look at it now and then. You've seen me swirling the whiskey. That serves a couple of purposes. One, it aerates the whiskey, gets some air in there, helps it open up, which simply means bringing out flavor and aroma. It also helps the evaporation of the alcohol vapors, which brings the aromas up to your nose in the glass. And this is my third glass tonight from this glass, so how well they're going to show up, I don't know. But, you know, the legs aren't doing real well here. But when you're, if it was my first glass of the night, you'd see the line up to which the whiskey had swirled, and it is wavy, at least the way I do it. And then you would see what they call legs forming and running down. The slower they form and the slower they run generally is an indication of viscosity, thickness, which in turn is generally an indication of proof. Now, generally, rule of thumb, it's not universally true. So we have the color, we have the glass, we have the color, we have the legs, and then the actual enjoyment of the whiskey, you nose it. Call it nosing because your nose. Now, you're likely to find that one nostril works better than the other. My right nostril picks up alcohol. That's it. I can't get any notes from here. Now, I put it to my whole nose, but sometimes I'll go like this. And you'll want to move the glass in front of your nose, especially when you're first learning how your nose works. You don't want to put it in too far. Let me turn sideways here, and I hope you can still see me. That's too far. For me, that's about right. My nose is far enough in that it can pick up aromas, not so far in that I get the scorch in my nostrils. And also, you don't want to go. You will send a spike of alcohol vapors up into your nose and it will hurt. I've done it accidentally a couple of 3 times. It hurts. Don't do it. And you'll have accidents too, guaranteed. I guarantee it. Now, what am I getting as I nose this whiskey? Cinnamon, brown sugar, and you pull it away periodically. You don't just keep it here. You pull it away to let your brain analyze what it's got, to name it in your mind, even if you're not speaking it, to let your nose kind of reset, take in some fresh air, and then you go back in. I think there's some vanilla in there. I'm not getting the apple. As you can see, this bottle is nearly half down. Frey Ranch 4-grain bourbon is about the same place. I got that shortly after I got this. And they don't put apples in. They do on this, just like the original Clyde May did. They don't put apples in at Frey Ranch, but it has an apple note that doesn't quit. This apple note dissipates pretty quick once you've opened the bottle. There's maybe a slight nuttiness in there. I'm definitely getting cinnamon, brown sugar, vanilla. And I could go on and I could pick out things more than that. But the point here isn't for me to deeply analyze a whiskey. It's to explain how I taste whiskey. So once you've nosed it to your satisfaction, if you're doing a review, and I'm going to do a video on whether you should do reviews. I'm also, by the way, going to do a video as we go along on whether people are just making up the notes they say they get. I will say here, no, I'm not. But having nosed it to your satisfaction, in this case to my satisfaction, you go in for a sip. And you want to sip this stuff. Now this is only 92 proof. And so it's not high at all. If you're a beginner in whiskey, it may be high on your palate. But in whiskey terms, it's not high. If you're a beginner, you're best starting with 80, working up to 90, to 100 and beyond. If you're a beginner, 92 proof might seem high on your palate. But it's not really that high. But yet, you sip whiskey. You take a whole mouthful, it's going to burn your whole mouth. You're not going to get near the flavor. If you're just throwing back a shot, you're not going to get any of the flavor. You're not going to get these aromas. All you're going to get is alcohol, and as I said, if that's all you want, just drink Everclear. And then having had a sip, I go back in and nose it again. I'm not getting anything new. Maybe a tinge of green apple, maybe. And sometimes you can't be sure what you're getting. Sometimes you might not be able to name a note, but you'll be able to say what it reminds you of. You know, a spring meadow. Well, that's not what you're actually tasting, but that's what it makes you think of. Now, on the first sip, I don't look for flavor. I look for the mouthfeel, and that's exactly what it sounds like, the way the whiskey feels in your mouth. Is it thick? Is it thin? Is it watery? Is it creamy? Is it buttery? Is it silky? And these are all obviously subjective terms. The mouthfeel on this was buttery, just slightly thinner than you'd expect melted butter to be. And of course, they watered it down to 92 proof for bottling. I might be getting a little bit of wood on the nose now, some oak. And while you watch me move the whiskey around in my mouth, it's boring, I know. I normally would hold it longer, I would move it longer. But this is for your benefit. I can drink this stuff anytime. On that sip, as I moved it around in my mouth, my brain went blank. Butter, honey, brown sugar, cinnamon. In that order is the way they presented themselves to me. And you do want to move it around in your mouth. Some people do what they call the Kentucky chew. They actually chew the whiskey. For me, that doesn't work. I don't swish it. I do go, not like that. I just gently move it around, push it with my tongue, use my cheek muscles some, and I don't know really how to explain it. This is just something you learn to do. And as it moves around my mouth, different receptors get different flavors. And there are people who could tell you which taste buds are where on your tongue and all this kind of thing, which chemicals do what. I can't do that. What I can tell you is that sometimes they'll get a flavor on the front of my tongue, sometimes on the back, sometimes in a strip down the middle. And so you move it around. And that way you can pick up the various things it has to offer. Sometimes I'll get a flavor along the sides of my cheeks, sometimes down along my jaw. And there are no taste buds there, so how I'm getting flavors there, I don't know. But by moving the whiskey around in my mouth, I get to taste all those various flavors, and it tastes good. Good whiskey tastes good. You may not have gotten to that point yet. That time I got a burst of vanilla on the front third of my tongue. And as I moved it around, that kind of faded and I got other flavors. Now, I was somewhere, and I don't remember where. I don't have a script for these. A lot of people do, and if you can deliver a script, whether memorized or on a screen in front of you, and sound natural, that's fine. When I preach, I use a manuscript, and I look down and I see a few lines, and I look up and and it sounds natural. I've heard recordings of myself, which is kind of weird, but I want to know how I'm doing so that I can do better. And that's a whole nother subject, and I'm not going to go into that. But I don't have a script for my videos. It's all off the top of my mind and the tip of my tongue. And that may be why it is not perfect, because my mind and my tongue are not perfect. Maybe a slight nuttiness coming in on the nose, and I keep nosing, I keep sipping back and forth, because the interplay of smell and taste it's very close. If you can't smell, a lot of your taste goes away. If you've ever had a cold and noticed that the taste of food is not what it was, it's because you can't smell, and that takes away some of the taste. So I keep going back and forth. But having nosed it, having tasted it, I now want to concentrate on the finish. And on the finish, there's a burst of oak, a burst of some kind of nuttiness. It's just general nuttiness, not anything specific. There's a hint of black pepper on the back of my tongue. And I held it longer than normal for the finish. And I'll do another sip in a minute and swallow it more quickly to get more finish out of it. Because the longer you hold it in your mouth, the more alcohol evaporates, the more of the congeners that give you the flavor, evaporate with it. But what is the finish? Well, the nose, the palate, your mouth. The finish is what you could call the aftertaste. It's the finish of a sip of whiskey. And you'll get it in your mouth, but also in your throat. And right now I'm getting a Kentucky hug. I swallowed it a while back. Now I'm getting the hug. I say Kentucky hug. Usually I just say hug. Because not only is bourbon anywhere in the United States, you don't have to make it in Kentucky, but there are whiskeys from outside the United States. You can't hardly say it's a Kentucky hug when you have some Lefroy whiskey from the island of Islay in Scotland. That's not a Kentucky hug. Nor can you say it's a Kentucky hug if it's Paul John Nirvana from India. You can't even say it's a Kentucky hug if it's from Texas. So usually I just say hug. But let's have that other finished sip. Definite oak, even a little bitter from the tannin of it. And swallowing so quick, well, now the oak is turning to dark chocolate. A little on the front of the tongue and then running back. But I swallowed too quickly that time. And that's another thing. How quickly you move through a glass, how quickly you sip, how quickly you swallow, how quickly you nose, can affect what you taste and smell. Well, I'm way over where I intended to be, but that is the very basics of how I taste whiskey, how I evaluate whiskey. So I need to end this. And although it's frustrating having to rebuild the list, I'm not in a frustrated mood now, so I'm going to go Korean on you. Their equivalent of salute or cheers. Tupshida.